A very good morning to all my dear friends. I am Prashant Mavani. I hope you all are doing good. Today is 11th June 2020. Day is Thursday. I would like to start today's discussion with this quote. Difficulties are things that show a person what they are. I think there are, generally speaking, you can divide people into two groups. One group is optimistic, positive group, right? And a person who is positive. See, every one of us, we are going to face some sort of difficulties throughout our lives. So, a positive person will come out strong. When we go through difficulties, right, a positive person will think like, okay, it's part and parcel of life. I have to go through it. There is always a way out. I have been through many other difficulties as well earlier on. And one thing I know for sure is that life will go on. So difficulties will make you stronger if you have a positive attitude, if you are optimistic about your life. And one more thing about difficulties, and this is my favorite, is that when you go through difficulties, there are so many people around you, right? You feel like they are they are your loved ones and they are your best friends and things like that. But when you go through difficulties will unmask all these people. So you will know really who is your best buddy. With this difference, StudyIQ has designed a smart course. This smart course is designed by some of the best faculties of our country. They have designed this smart course keeping in mind the necessity of Civil Services Examination, that is IAS examination, and it covers both the pre and mains examination. To find out more about it, all you have to do is download our mobile application. Download the PDF of today's lecture from my Telegram channel. You can follow me on Facebook. Please make sure that you share this lecture with other students. It's very important. The more you share it, the more you tell about this series to various different students and people, the more it will help us to expand this series, take it to a new level, and for its sustainability. So need your support in sharing this. And if you genuinely think like today's lecture was worth it, then hit the like button. And to support our overall efforts, hit the subscribe button. Dear friends, on our table we have 5 important articles. The first one is about group of 7. So it's about geopolitics. So we are going to spend some 10 minutes after this topic. There are so many interesting things to learn from this particular article. Then we have one on healthcare system. This one is about migrant workforce. This one is about policing. And the last one is about IBC. So let's crack on. G7, right? First of all, let's go through the countries who are part of this G7. On your screen, you can see you have this infographic here. So Germany, UK, France, Canada, USA, Italy, and Japan. You don't have to worry about remembering these names now. Of course, you would be able to download the PDF of today's lecture. So you can download it and then you can go through it. Quick fact. G7, when it started, it was known as G7. Then later on, it became G8 because Russia was part of G8. And then Russia was kicked out back in 2014 because annexation of Crimea. So again, it is G7. Now, G7 summit was going to be held in mid-June in USA. But this thing has been cancelled. And the reason why it is cancelled in the sense it will be organized a bit later on, maybe September 2020. The reason why it is delayed or rescheduled is because Angela Merkel, Vice Chancellor of Germany, she said that first of all, COVID-19 episode is going on. So this is one reason she said that she won't be able to travel. And the second thing is there was no fixed plan. There was nothing that solid, that if you attend this meeting, then something solid will come out of this G7 meeting. So these are the predominantly two reasons why she said that she is going to stay away. And after that, Mr. Trump decided that it's better to reschedule it. So, of course, the countries who are a part of G7 now, right? Now, a few days ago, we were discussing about this thing. Remember that Mr. Trump has proposed that G7 is not that good enough. It's not sharp enough anymore. So we need to have either G10 or maybe G11. If you go for G10, then the 7 countries, and then you add India, South Korea, and Australia. And if you go for G11, then you will add these 3 countries and Russia as well. So this will become G11. Mr. Trump wants to see Five Eyes countries as well on board. So just imagine, right, for a moment that you have G11, then you add this Five Eyes nations as well. If they are not there here, then you add, let's say, New Zealand. You add Canada is already there. So just New Zealand is the country that is missing, right? Because Australia is already covered here. So first of all, let me tell you how many countries you have in this Five Eyes. So this will make it a bit easier for you. So you have United States, UK. This is Canada here, this one is Australia, and this is New Zealand. Infographic is there on your screen. You can download the PDF and go through it again. So this five nations, they have this agreement between them that they will share intelligence with each other. They will share some sort of spy-related documents with each others. So this group is known as Five Eyes. So Mr. Trump wants to bring in Five Eyes on board. So basically all this G11 nations, and you want to add New Zealand on it, so it will become more like G12, you know what I mean? So this is the main idea, and China is not going to be happy about this thing, because it looks like, you know, at some point of time all these nations, they have apart from Russia to be precise, other nations, they are a bit concerned about this whole trade war. And then later on, this whole COVID-19 episode. So, like Australia, Australia has asked for a thorough investigation on coronavirus and its origin and other things. And so did European Union. So, and of course, USA is saying it for a very long period of time now. So, China is not going to be happy with this G11 or G12 or G10 idea. Prime Minister Modi was specially invited last year when this G7 meeting took place in France. How it works is that a host country can invite any other country that particular country likes. So last year, the president of France, he invited Mr. Modi. That means India, and with India, Australia, Burkina Faso, Chile, Egypt, Rwanda, Senegal, Spain, South Africa, all these countries were invited. Now, let me quickly take you through history of G7. G7 emerged as a restricted club of rich democracies in early 1970s. What happened is basically because of this 1973 Arab-Israel war, the price of petrol, price of fuel quadrupled. That means it shot up 4 times to the what price was earlier on before this war. And OPEC nations, OPEC as a group, they imposed an embargo against Canada, Japan, Netherlands, United States. So basically not selling oil to these nations, not supplying oil to these nations. So this was the decision taken because of this 1973 and issues going on in 1973. So after that, French president, he invited 5 most developed members, then 5 most developed nations. So United States, Germany, Japan, Italy, and United Kingdom. So you can say this Western powers, right? Generally speaking, they have this one sort of ideology. So that's why they are known as Western powers. So this Western power countries, they had a meeting, and in 1976, Canada joined this. It was taken on board, and later as a non-enumerated member, European Union or European Commission. Then it was known as European Commission Community. It became part of this whole thing. So this is G7, starting of G7, and I have already told you about this 2014 Russia's annexation of Crimea. Russia was taken on board in 1998. Bill Clinton and Tony Blair, these are the 2 leaders. They were very much enthusiastic about Russia coming on board, and finally Russia was taken on board 1998, and 2014 it was kicked out. If we talk about economic circumstances, then this G7 nations, they were so strong. Can you imagine? They used to cover, the 7 nations, they used to cover 2/3 of global GDP. 2/3. Here we are talking about what? 66%, roughly speaking, 66% of global economy. As per PricewaterhouseCoopers, it's a firm, right? The World in 2050 report, G7 now account for less than 1/3. So they used to be 66% global GDP, but now they are less than 33%, or let's say, for remembering, for a round figure, 30%. They represent 30% of global GDP in terms of PPP, and in terms of MER, they are representing half of global GDP. But PPP is more reliable rather than MER. So 30%, right? Just for now, for understanding, 30%. Now, it's not just this nations, right? We have this E7. E7 nations are Brazil, China, India, Indonesia, Mexico, Russia, Turkey. These 7 nations are emerging economies, and at present they also cover 1/3 of global GDP. So they are getting stronger and stronger, and as per PCW report, by 2050, world's best performing economies will be: first number China, second India, third USA, fourth Indonesia, fifth Brazil, and sixth will be Russia. So the table is turning. You can say the weight is, this nations are getting more weight. As you can see, apart from USA, all other nations are developing nations, right? By 2050, all these nations will be heavyweights. So things are changing quite a lot. Now, there are some limitations of G7. Now, before that, before I take you through limitations, quickly go through this one. That India's GDP will increase to 17 trillion by 2030 and 42 trillion hopefully in 2050. Now, limitations of G7. Any institution, any group is judged by the action, the things that it has delivered so far. Unfortunately, G7 has not delivered as per its capacity. G7 failed to head off the economic downturn of 2007-8, and this led to the rise of G20. The success or otherwise of multilateral institutions are judged by the standard of whether or not they have successfully addressed the core global or regional challenges of time. At present, global challenge is COVID-19 pandemic. Then we have climate change, which is a sort of perennial issue at present. Issue of Daesh. Daesh means ISIS was there. And, things are not that right in parts of Africa, particularly Saharan Africa. Things are not so great in Yemen and other parts of West Asia. So if we analyze, if we keep, or if we place a magnifying glass on G7, then we find that they have done basically, I won't use the word nothing, but I would say not appropriate. Their actions are, in fact, more disappointing. G7 nations, they account for 59%. This is one of the most interesting facts in today's lecture. G7 countries account for 59% of historic global CO2 emissions from 1850 to 2010, and their coal-fired plants emit twice more CO2 than those of entire African continent. These are the nations, this G7 countries, they have. We were talking about this Paris climate change and other things, remember? So these are the nations who have basically destroyed our environment. And when it comes to contributing money, they are not doing it. When it comes to, on one side, they say that they are one of the most powerful nations. They are one of the most, they are the richest democracies. But when it comes to taking actions and delivering things, they are not doing enough. Out of this G7 countries, 3 countries, France, Germany, and UK. I'm not sure how many of you are aware about this thing, but so many youngsters from these countries, they volunteered for ISIS, roughly speaking 22 to 30,000. Mediterranean Sea is a death trap for people fleeing against fear of persecution and threat to their lives. When they try to enter this Europe from Syria or maybe from Northern Africa, then they don't find any sort of help over there. So this means so many boats are sinking in this Mediterranean Sea, remember? The world is in a state of disorder and we need a new institution. Existing international institutions have proven themselves unequal to this task. They have disappointed us. So we need a new institution. What we can do is we can have E7 countries, and then we can add Germany, Japan, UK, France, Mexico, Turkey, South Korea, Australia. We can do this thing. This is coming from G7 meeting back in 2005, when Tony Blair, then Prime Minister of UK, he experienced this thing that he experimented, in fact, with this thing that G7, during this G7 meeting, BRICS nations were invited. So this was just a one-off event. But we can learn so many things from it, that we can have this new group where we can have this E7 nations, and then we can have other nations on board. India is going to bat for international trade, climate change, COVID-19. Apart from that, counter-terrorism and counter-proliferation. These are the topics that India would like to work on, and these are Indian priorities. Global public health and revival of growth, trade in a sustainable manner. These are other challenges that we need to sort out together. Then we have to ensure effective implementation of 1975 Biological Weapons Convention, so that no one creates some sort of microorganisms or viruses to hit or to create problems for other countries. And then we need to rein in Iran as well. We don't want another country to acquire nuclear weapons. Once they acquire nuclear weapons, it will become nearly impossible for us to agree them to get rid of it. Problems going on in Afghanistan, Gulf and West Asia needs to be sorted out as quickly as possible. And of course, Korean Peninsula denuclearization and making South China Sea tension free. These are some big topics that the world needs to work on. Then we have needed a transfusion for public health care. Now, dear friends, without going too much into the depth of this particular topic, the reason I'm not going, because these are some very basic and common things. Like, I'll ask you one question. Going to private hospital will cost you more, or public hospital? Of course, going to private hospital is going to cost you more. Every year we have some 5-6 crore people, right? They fall from above poverty line, they fall in this poverty line zone because they have gone through, or their family members have gone through some sort of medical operation or surgery. Nowadays we have a good thing that Ayushman Bharat is there, and Ayushman Bharat has been so far so good. Of course, more needs to be done, but it has helped so many people, no doubt, right? Government has released some figures as well that it has helped so many people. So this indicates that its demand was already there. So things are moving in right direction, but there are so many things that we need to do in our country. If we go through our hospitals ecosystem, then we find that more beds are available in private hospitals compared to public sector hospitals. And you can find here that in our country there are total some 19 lakh hospital beds and 95,000 ICU beds and 48,000 ventilators in India. Most of them are concentrated in these 7 states, and we have only 3 states where the ratio is otherwise. Like in Tamil Nadu, Delhi and West Bengal, you have more beds and ventilators in public sector or public hospital compared to private sector. That's a bit strange because unfortunately rest of the states we find there are more private players. So what went wrong, or why we are in this situation? The thing is, after independence, India means our population was, and even today our population is very high, right? So, and even today we have this sort of diseases like malaria and dengue and tuberculosis. But overall, you can say that we have done quite well, right? Life expectancy has gone up. Primary care is reasonably speaking available, generally speaking, everywhere, right? Preventive measures, immunization, maternity, all these things, tuberculosis, right? AIDS program. We focused on all these areas, right? So you can make 2 branches. One is like vaccination and immunization and all these things. So we were focused on this thing, and we missed this surgery and multi-speciality hospitals and other things. So there was a vacuum. So this vacuum was filled up by private medicine. And you know the story now, right? We know how much they make. And I'm not saying that they are doing anything wrong. The thing is that when government is not providing this sort of things, then of course you have only one option left, and that is private care. So that's what people means. We don't have any choice in that, right? If we have this competition between, if you have a very good government hospital and then you have a very good private hospital, then of course they have to compete, right? Price is going to be very important, but that private hospital should be very good to survive, right? Because here, generally speaking, in public hospital, things are going to be free. But this is just an imagination. We don't have that sort of thing here. Means I'm not saying that things are not free. The thing is that you don't get that facility in our in our public hospitals. We spend just 1.3% of our GDP on public healthcare, and this is not enough at all, as we all know. So we need to spend somewhere around 5%, right, if we want to see a drastic change. When it comes to private medicine, right, we don't have any uniformity. We have quacks, we have big hospitals, right, very expensive hospitals, and then we have some reasonably speaking good hospitals, charitable hospitals, and they are catering so many poor as well as middle class and other people. So we have this wide range in private medicine as well. We need to make it a bit more uniform, get rid of quacks, right? As far as private institutions are concerned, we need to regulate them. Costing, if you go for a heart surgery, let's say, Wockhardt will charge you 10 lakh rupees. Sterling will charge you maybe 9 lakh, maybe 11 lakh rupees, right? And then other hospital, if you go Apollo, Zydus, they all have different rates for the same thing. So we need to regulate it to an extent. The wide range of quality in medical service in India reflects the wide range of income and wealth in our country. This is again a very interesting statement that I find here, that it is estimated that the wealth of top 1% wealth is 70 is four times combined wealth of 70% bottom population. So 1% wealthy people, they have 4 times the combined wealth of the bottom 70%. Can you imagine? So they can afford all these big hospitals. We have nowadays insurance, or penetration of health insurance has been reasonably speaking good, but it's very expensive. For a person who is making 20,000, 15,000, he or she cannot afford health insurance, of course. Training of doctors and healthcare workers. We need to train. We need more educational institutions so that we can produce more doctors. So we need that. We need to create one ecosystem for medical equipments that we can produce here, so it will be much cheaper, as well as it will create more jobs, of course. So these are the things that we need to do, and of course investment in healthcare sector, like public healthcare. We need to create primary, tertiary, and secondary. All these 3 level of at all 3 levels we need to have hospitals, clinics, multi-speciality hospitals, etc. Moving on, look back in relief. This one is about interstate workers, migrant workers. Now 57.22 lakh migrant workers have returned to their hometowns. Supreme Court has fixed a 15-day deadline for government to complete this transportation process of migrant workers, and it has also ordered that drop these criminal cases against workers, because they were extremely desperate during this lockdown. So whatever has gone wrong, let it be there. Just forget about it and move on. Supreme Court made all state governments file comprehensive affidavits on the action they had taken to facilitate the return of the workers. It has further asked the states to spell out their plans for registering all the workers, their skills, their areas of employment, different welfare and employment schemes, etc. Okay. The problem is that I think Supreme Court is, and I have huge respect for Supreme Court, but here, first of all, Supreme Court has been late. Second thing, not just Supreme Court, High Courts have been late as well, because when action was going on, where things were going on, at that point of time, there was no strong stand taken by courts. So that's very unfortunate. But anyway, they said der aaye durust aaye, so now they are here. So whatever they can, the water is muddy, of course. If they can sort out few things, then that will help migrant workers. But their orders will hardly change the reality, because we don't have the system to execute the amount or the things that we should provide, like shelter. Can you provide shelter to they should be given, but do we have that capacity? No. The state governments, they don't have that capacity to give. So few things are not practical. Moving on, policing the police is not enough. This one is about yesterday's discussion. Dear friends, if this is your first day and this is the first time you are watching this video, then I will recommend you guys to go through yesterday's video and check out that portion of our discussion on this racism. So here this article is talking about yesterday's case. It's about the USA Mr. Floyd who died, right? Police personnel, you know the whole case, right? So most interesting thing is that we find people opposing this whole thing and in unison, spontaneously around the world in various different countries, in parts of Europe, in England and other places as well. In fact, white people were out and they were seen in this marches against the police in US and UK. So we need to change the system. There are so many bad things going on. But now the question is, how much force is okay? How much is too soft and how much is too hard? When Nirbhaya case unfortunately happened in our country at that point of time, there were people, they said that the police is too soft. Some occasions people say that police is too hard. So finding that right, equilibrium is very challenging, because every district in a state itself, you will find that there are few districts they are okay, but there are few districts they are very tough to handle. So just imagine our country, we cannot have a one system for, of course some basic things can apply throughout our country, but using force, if you don't use force at all, then you know very well what will happen in our country, right? People will do whatever they like if once they know that police will not use necessary force. So it all depends. It's all about culture. I'm not saying culture of society, but culture of policing as well. Like Maharashtra police is different when you compare it with Surat police or Gujarat police. When you compare Gujarat police with Kerala police, then you find there is a huge amount of difference in the way they do things. Last one is about The Fault in Our Drafts. There is a very famous film called The Fault in Our Stars. This title reminds me of that thing, The Fault in Our Drafts. So this one is about Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. And government said that it is going to come out with back in April, government said that by 30th April, government will come out with government will basically suspend this IBC so that you cannot file any sort of insolvency case against any company for 1 year, of course, not forever. But on 30th April, government said nothing about it. In mid-May, Finance Minister announced that the government was planning to bring in ordinance to suspend provisions, but nothing happened. Finally, 5th June, government said that it is introducing Section 10A, inserting Section 10A in the IBC, and this will put a stay on all this sort of cases from 25th March, right? After that, if you have gone through bankruptcy, then it will put a stay on it for 1 year. So 6 months, and if required, then another 6 months. So this is what we find in provision. What happens normally is that when things are not clear in provision, explanation is given in proviso. Here, it's a bit different. Provision is clear, that 6 months and extra 6 months. But in proviso, it is said that it is unlimited. There is no fixed time for it. So this is creating confusion. Banks and there are so many other institutions, they are not sure what actually they have to do. One more thing, that earlier on, the government what used to happen is that you can trigger this IBC resolution process, insolvency resolution process, in a case that is 1 lakh or above 1 lakh rupees. Now this bar has been raised to 1 crore or more. So what will happen with this MSMEs, right? If they need to take money from 30 lakh rupees from someone, 25 lakh rupees from someone, they have to knock the doors of civil courts. So this is going to be more time consuming for them. So overall, you can say that this latest ordinance and the decision of government as far as IBC is concerned, right, it is full of flaws, right? There are so many things that government should repair. Moving on to news items, dear friends, China reaches accord with India on LSE SPAT. As per the agreement, a series of ground level talks would be held over the next 10 days with 4 other points of conflict identified at PP 15, PP 17, Chushul and north bank of Pangong Lake. COVID-19 turns India's urban blight. Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, Ahmedabad. These are worst affected cities. Government today said that for the first time the number of recovered patients from COVID-19 has exceeded the number of active patients. And five militants gunned down in Sophian. Lieutenant Governor of Delhi has ordered that there should be LED boards installed so that people can know exactly how many beds are available, charges, details of persons to be contacted for admission, and so this will inculcate more transparency. Kerala continues to report a rise in COVID-19 cases with 65 new cases and one COVID death today. Overall, things are not that bad in Kerala. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to Assam Chief Minister Sarbanand Sonowal regarding this Bagjan fire incident in Assam, right? So there was a big blast yesterday. So the nearby area, the spread of fire to neighborhood areas has been controlled. But Oil India Limited has said that this fire may take 4 more weeks, to get normal or to douse it. Huge enthusiasm is being seen among the people about sending entries to My Life, My Yoga. This is a video blogging competition. And good news for Gujarat and good news for our country. Asiatic lions population has gone up by 28.87%. In 2015, it was 523, or we used to have 523 lions in our country. Now we have 674. And that's everything from my side. Thank you very much for your love. Thank you very much for your support. God bless you all. Jai Hind.